Now, the topic before us is data protection in cybersecurity and overview of GDPR. In this world, when we are making use of technology in all spheres of life, we are also have to confront with cyber attacks because the cyber criminals are always active with various forms of malware. Their main aim is to earn money. They want unauthorized access to our system, or they may want to delete our data, or they may want unauthorized access to our data so that they can sell the same data in the black market or to cause harm to our systems. The main target of the cyber criminals is the data of the individuals. To protect the data of the individuals, the different governments of the different countries have passed acts to protect the data so that the companies who make use of the who store or process the data of the citizens or the individuals also take necessary precautions to protect the data. When we are talking about cybersecurity, two acts are always mentioned. One is GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which is belongs to European Union, and HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which pertains to USA. Now we discuss in detail GDPR, that is General Data Protection Regulation. This act pertains to European Union. The main aim of this regulation is to protect the personal data of European citizens, because if such like laws are not there, no company will spend money to take cybersecurity steps to protect the data of the individuals. So GDPR is a comprehensive data protection law in European Union. Its aim is to protect the privacy and security of personal data of European citizens. Now, a question which may come to our mind is, what is the meaning of personal data? Personal data means name, address, email, location, IP address. So, all this personal data may help a person to locate a particular individual on the basis of personal data. Now, another point which comes to our mind is whether this GDPR, this regulation applies to offline companies or online companies or both, and or both, which is true, whether it applies to only online companies or offline companies. The answer is it applies to both. It This regulation applies to online companies also and as well as offline companies. How? We may go to some hotel or some other retailer, and they may also collect some of your personal data such as name, address, email address, mobile number. This is your personal data. When you visit a hotel and you stay there for night, they may also collect the relevant data of yours and store it somewhere in their computer systems. So GDPR applies to offline companies also. There are online companies such as e-commerce companies, Amazon, then it is eBay, then Airbnb, which provides the rented accommodation all over the world at cheap rates. Then there are social media platforms such as Facebook. Then we make use of Google. Then there are financial institutions and banks which store, collect, store, and process the data of the individuals. So banks, financial institutions are also subject to this regulation. Even Facebook and Google have faced fines for some violation with regard to GDPR. Then there are email providers, there are cloud service providers, data centers. They all store, collect, store, and process the data. All these have to comply with GDPR, otherwise, they have to pay for fines or whatever is there in the GDPR regulations with regard to the violations of the regulations. Now, this GDPR, this regulation sets high standards for companies and organizations regarding the collection, storage, and management of personal data. One thing which comes to our mind, whether personal data includes the medical records of a person, because many times we have to get admission in some hospital, or we may have to visit some specialist doctor or general physician or some other pharmacy, other laboratory, whether all such medical record also comes within the purview of GDPR. Yes, the personal data as comes within the purview of GDPR also applies to the medical records of an individual. This regulation GDPR gives EU citizens more control over their personal information. One specific point which is to be noted, that this regulation GDPR applies to European citizens only. That is in respect of the personal data of European citizens only this act applies. Now another question which may comes to our mind, that European citizens are residing in European Union. So within European Union only this act applies. No, this is not correct, because European citizens may be availing the services of some company which is situated outside European Union. They may also be buying products online from a company which is situated outside European Union. So, all the companies or service providers which sell their products or provide services to the European citizens and collect, store, and process the personal data of European citizens have to comply with GDPR. Now, key points. What are the key points with respect to this General Data Protection Regulation? First is consent. Organizations must obtain clear and explicit consent from individuals to collect and process their personal data. It is not that any organization can collect the data, personal data of the European citizens. No, they have to take specific or clear consent from the individuals to collect and process their personal data. Next is data protection by design and default. What it means? It means that companies who collect, store, and process the personal data of European citizens must implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure data protection by design and default. That is, they have to adopt cybersecurity measures of a very high standard to ensure that the personal data of European citizens protected by is protected. Data privacy rights. Under GDPR, individuals have several rights regarding their personal data. What are the rights which are given by this regulation to the individuals, that is the European citizens? First is right to access. European citizens can view their personal data. Then they have to the right to rectify. What to rectify? Rectify if there is any inaccuracy in the personal data which is stored by some organization. If there is some inaccuracy in the personal data of an individual, the European citizen can apply or request for the rectification of that personal data which is inaccurate. Then right to erase. If the personal data of a European citizen is stored somewhere in the records of the company, then the European citizen can apply, request for the deletion of that data. Then is right to restrict processing. This regulation also gives the right to the individual to request a temporary or permanent halt to processing of their personal information or personal data in certain situations while a dispute about its accuracy is being resolved. Next is data protection officer, DPO. All the companies who collect, store, and process the data of the European citizens must appoint a DPO, data protection officer, to oversee data protection compliance. Next is accountability. Organizations must show that they are compliant with GDPR and they have implemented appropriate steps, whether they are technical or organizational measures, to protect the personal data of the individuals. They have taken in reality. They have to show that. Data breach notification. This GDPR is more strict as compared to HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which is applicable in USA. GDPR is more strict, as the data notification of data breach has to be given by the companies to the affected individuals and relevant authorities within 72 hours. Further, there is one more difference between GDPR and HIPAA. The scope of GDPR is much broader because it applies to personal data of the individuals, and the personal data includes medical records also. Whereas HIPAA, which is applicable in US or has been enacted by US, applies only to the medical records. Next, international data transfers. GDPR regulates the transfer of personal data outside EU. It may be possible that a company is situated outside European Union, say Canada, and this company in situated in Canada is providing products or services to European citizens, EU citizens. So, though this company is situated outside European Union, but that company has to comply with GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. Even the international agencies situated in European Union have to comply with GDPR. Now, GDPR requires that when an organization transfers personal data outside European Union, the organization must ensure that the recipient country or organization has adequate safeguards in place to protect the data. Next is scope of GDPR. Scope means to which companies or organizations this regulation applies. This regulation applies to companies and organizations that process the personal data of European citizens regardless of where the company is based. The company may be based anywhere in the world, but if it processes the personal data of European citizens, then it has to comply with the regulations of this GDPR. If a company offers goods and services to European citizens, then or monitors the behavior of the European citizens, then it also have to comply with the regulations of GDPR. Then penalties for non-compliance. GDPR has notified that if there is violation of GDPR rules, then it can result in significant fines for the violators, and that fine may range up to 4% of a company's global annual turnover or 20 million pounds, whichever is higher. Personal data. What is the meaning of personal data? Personal data in the context of GDPR means any information that can be used to identify an individual directly or indirectly. Personal data includes any information such as name, address, email, identification number such as social security number, passport number. On the basis of passport number or social security number, we can identify individual. On the basis of say mobile number or location data or IP address of our devices, then on the basis of our biometric data, that is fingerprints, facial recognition, an individual can be recognized. All this comes within the purview of personal data. Even the medical records also come within the purview of personal data, as within the scope of all comes within the scope of GDPR. This GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, has enhanced data protection and cybersecurity practices by imposing strict requirements or on organizations that handle personal data of European citizens. You may also appreciate that if the European Union does not impose strict rules and regulations to protect the data of their citizens, then no company in the world will take serious steps to protect the data of the European citizens. Not only European Union, but almost all the governments of different countries in the world have adopted laws to protect the data of their citizens. GDPR has increased the awareness of data privacy and security and has prompted businesses to implement robust data protection measures. Thanks for watching. If you like our course, please spare some time to give a star rating to our course.